After I spent $10,000 on my granddaughter's 18th birthday, she said, "Grandma's so weird and embarrassing. She should leave," in front of everyone. So I vanished like she asked, along with her college fund. I never thought spending $10,000 on Maya's dream birthday would end with me walking out like a stray dog no one wanted. It was supposed to be magical. I'd rented the nicest hall in town, chandeliers glittering like starlight, DJ spinning her favorite playlist, custom cake designed like a tiered Chanel purse, the kind of night that made a girl feel seen, loved, cherished. But when Maya took the mic to thank everyone, she turned to the crowd, laughed, and said, "And of course, Grandma's here, so weird and embarrassing as always. Maybe she should leave before people think she's part of this." Just like that, on a microphone, in front of 50 guests, her voice wrapped in mockery. And people laughed, not all of them, but enough. I felt the blood rush to my ears, that horrible heat of being publicly humiliated by the very person you would have taken a bullet for. And she didn't flinch. She didn't even look at me. She was too busy posing for photos with a smug little tilt to her chin, soaking up likes and compliments like sunlight. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't make a scene. I just smiled the way you do when your face is about to crack, picked up my purse, and left, quietly. She got her wish. I disappeared. But I took the $74,000 college fund with me. That wasn't the first time Maya made me feel small, but it was the last time I'd let her get away with it. I used to make excuses for her father's influence, her grief, her desperate need to be liked. But this was not pain talking. This was entitlement, arrogance, performance for an audience. And me? I was just a prop in her story, the quirky old lady she'd outgrown. I raised her. From age 5, when her mother, my only daughter, was killed in a crash. I was the one who wiped her tears, packed her lunches, taught her to tie her shoes, paid for every field trip, and read every bedtime story. Now I was a joke with a checkbook. They say your heart can break 1,000 times and still keep beating. I didn't feel broken anymore. I felt done. And done women are dangerous, especially the ones who know exactly where the money is. I didn't go home right away. I just sat there in the car, engine off, hands on the wheel like I was waiting for someone to come chase after me. No one did. The music from the hall kept leaking through the closed windows, bass thumping like a second heartbeat. I could still hear Maya laughing, still see her grinning for photos. She hadn't even looked for me. I pulled out my phone and opened Instagram. I knew I shouldn't, but I did. Her story was already up. "Best night ever!" 2 hearts party popper, slide after slide of pink balloons, champagne glasses clinking, filtered selfies in soft lighting. And there, in one clip, my back, me walking out the door while someone whispered behind the camera, "Oh my God, is that her grandma leaving?" And laughter. Again, no one called after me. No one texted. Not Maya, not her father, not one of those carefully curated guests, not even a, "Where did you go?" I sat alone in my car while the battery drained from my phone, watching the world celebrate her like she was some kind of princess. And I realized I didn't even exist in that world anymore, not as a person, just a resource. I was the woman who gave, the woman who wrote the checks, the woman who smiled and clapped from the corner, clutching a purse and memories while they performed affection for likes. But that night, something inside me calcified. I didn't cry, not then. I just whispered one sentence to the steering wheel. She doesn't deserve a future built on my past. Because that college fund, that wasn't a gift. That was my life in numbers. That was 10 years of saying no to myself. No new car, no vacations, no replacing the broken washing machine for 2 years, lugging my laundry to the community center instead. Also, she wouldn't have to carry the same struggle her mother and I did. And this is how she thanked me? I could have forgiven her if it was just that one moment. But it wasn't. It had been dripping for years. Small humiliations disguised as jokes, subtle corrections when I spoke, sighs when I hugged her in public. "Grandma, don't talk like that. It's cringe. Don't wear that to my concert, okay? You're too noticeable. Can you just stay in the back for the picture?" I told myself it was normal. Teenagers act out. I told myself she was grieving, that she'd grow out of it. But she didn't grow up. She grew entitled. And I grew invisible. So I made a decision in that car, while the engine stayed cold and the music thumped through the walls of that rented hall. If I was so embarrassing, if I didn't belong, if she wanted to act like I was already gone, then I'd give her the real thing. I pulled up the banking app, logged in, and stared at the 6 digits sitting in that custodial fund. The money I'd saved in my daughter's memory. The money Maya thought would always be hers. She was right about one thing. Tonight was the end of something. But not my dignity, not my place, not my worth. It was the end of her free ride. Because from that moment on, I wasn't the woman who gave anymore. I was the woman who took it back. The next morning, I walked into the bank wearing the same clothes I wore to Maya's party. The heels pinched. My eyes were dry. And something about the way I moved made people step out of my path. The college fund was in a custodial account, under my name, despite what everyone seemed to believe. I'd set it up after my daughter died, every birthday, every tax refund, every spare dollar that didn't go toward rent or groceries. I tucked it away like a promise I was too afraid to say out loud. It wasn't just money. It was my apology for Maya losing her mother. It was the safety net I never had. It was the only thing I thought I'd done right, until she made a mockery of it. The banker recognized me. "Morning, Mrs. Lane. How can I help today?" I didn't smile. "I'd like to talk about the custodial trust under Maya Lane's name." He blinked, nodded, and led me to one of those small offices with the glass walls and fake privacy. When he brought up the account, I could see the number reflected in his glasses, $74, 218.44. All that sacrifice, sitting in a neat little number. He cleared his throat. "Is there an update you'd like to make?" I met his eyes. "Would you like to transfer it out?" He hesitated. "That's possible, yes. It's a custodial fund, and you're the custodian. Until she turns 21, control remains with you." "Good," I said. "Because the girl that money was meant for no longer exists." He looked startled. I didn't flinch. "I want the full amount transferred into my personal account. Today." He tapped at the keyboard. "We'll just need your signature on the transfer form." I took the pen, and as the ink met the page, I felt a calm settle in my chest. Cold, still, powerful. She'd get her wish. No more embarrassing old grandma. No more quiet sacrifices. Just absence. And consequences. The banker printed the receipt, handed it to me with an awkward smile. "I hope everything works out, ma'am." "Oh, it will," I said. "Just not for her." That night, I poured a glass of wine and sat at the kitchen table where Maya used to do her homework. I stared at the updated bank balance and let the silence stretch long and deliberate. This wasn't revenge. It was restoration. I gave her every chance to treat me like family. She chose an audience over love. Now she'd learned the first rule of adulthood. Every action has a cost. And this time, I wasn't the one paying it. Mr. Jenkins had been my lawyer since before Maya was born. He drafted my daughter's will after the accident, helped me navigate guardianship. He was the kind of man who never wore anything without a crease in it and always offered you water like he was about to read you your rights. When I walked into his office that day, I didn't ask how he was doing. I didn't sit with the usual nervous politeness. I placed the bank receipt on his desk like a weapon. "I want to rewrite the trust." He looked at the paper, then at me. Something flickered behind his glasses. "Are you sure, Elaine? This was meant for Maya's education." I nodded once. "She educated me first." He opened the folder. "You have full authority to redirect these funds. It's your name, your contributions, your terms." I crossed my legs, leaning back in the chair. Good, because I wanted to go to someone who still knows what gratitude sounds like. He didn't ask for details. He just nodded and began typing. I could hear the keys clicking like a clock, counting down the seconds of Maya's imagined future. "You can leave it in trust, or convert it into a scholarship, or simply donate it under your daughter's name. You have options," he said. I tapped the armrest of my chair. "I don't want Maya to be able to contest it. At all. She turned 18 last week. She thinks that makes her an adult. Let's make her feel it." Mr. Jenkins chuckled softly. You always did have a sharper edge than people realized. I looked at him without smiling. She laughed at me in front of strangers. She used the memory of my daughter, the mother she barely remembers, as decoration for a popularity contest. And that fund? That was built on every year I went without. Well, she got everything. He nodded again, more slowly this time. We'll finalize a revocation, full removal of her as beneficiary. We'll add new terms. And I'll prepare a clause that makes it impossible to reverse without your notarized consent. Perfect, I said. Let's find someone who actually wants a future. The paperwork was done in under an hour. When he handed me the final draft to review, I noticed something small. Just a section header, but it hit me like a brick to the chest. Elaine Lane Memorial Fund, in loving memory of Allison Lane, my daughter, Maya's mother. I hadn't said her name out loud in months. I traced the letters with my fingertip, my throat tightening, not from sadness, but clarity. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about restoration, restoring the value of my daughter's life, restoring the meaning of my sacrifice. Maya had burned that bridge, publicly, proudly, so I was building a new one, from the ashes. Do you want her notified of the change? Jenkins asked quietly. I folded the paper, slid it into my bag. She'll find out when it matters most. He paused. And if she comes asking? I looked him dead in the eye. Then she can learn how it feels to be ignored by the person you thought would always say yes. After I left Mr. Jenkins' office, I didn't go home. I drove past my turn, past the quiet street where Maya grew up, past the grocery store where I used to buy her snacks, always the pink ones, the kind she said made her feel special. I didn't feel guilt. Not really, but something kept pressing behind my ribs, tight and unspoken. Not regret, just a question I didn't want to ask myself alone. The community center had a faded blue sign and a cracked parking lot. I hadn't been there in years, not since I dropped off donations during the holidays. But I remembered seeing the flyer once, grief and family boundaries, free walk-in sessions. It wasn't grief that brought me there, not in the usual sense, but something had died, and part of me wanted to make sure I wasn't turning cold just because no one remembered to check if I was still warm. Inside, the room smelled like peppermint tea and stale books. The woman behind the desk didn't ask for my name, just gestured to a small chair by her desk and said, "What's going on?" I sat down slowly, folding my coat over my lap like armor. "I gave my granddaughter everything," I said. "She made me a joke in front of 50 people. And now I've cut her off." The woman didn't blink. "And how do you feel about that?" I let the words hang for a moment, then finally said, "Clear. Like I wiped a fogged-up mirror." She nodded once. "So what's the conflict?" I exhaled. "Her father, my son, he won't see it that way. He'll say I'm punishing her. He'll say I overreacted. He'll spin it like he always does. And for once, I don't care. But I want to make sure that what I'm doing isn't just pain dressed up like power." She smiled softly. "Sometimes a boundary looks like revenge, but it's really just respect for yourself." I looked at her for a long time. Her words didn't feel like comfort. They felt like confirmation. Like someone had opened a door I didn't know I needed to walk through. "What if it does hurt her?" I asked, quiet now. "Then she learns," she said. "Lessons are supposed to hurt when they're real." I sat there in silence. Then I laughed, low and sharp. "She's not the only one who needs to learn something," I said. "My son thinks he's safe, thinks he's in the will, thinks I'm too soft to ever draw blood." I leaned forward, looking the counselor straight in the eye. "He thinks this was about Maya, but it was about him too. He raised her like that. He made her like that. Entitled, unaccountable. She mocked me publicly, but he taught her it was acceptable." The counselor said nothing. She didn't have to. I stood up, smoothing my coat, my voice calm, my spine straighter than it had been in years. "I'm not here to forgive them. I'm here to make sure that what comes next isn't petty, it's surgical." Before I left, I glanced at the wall behind her desk, a framed quote, "When people show you who they are, believe them." Maya Angelou. I nodded once. I believe them now. I said. And I believe in me more. That night I didn't cry. I didn't pour wine. I didn't sit in silence hoping for a call. I went home, sat at my desk, and opened a blank letter. Not to Maya, not to Daniel, but to myself. No one is coming to save you, but no one gets to use you either. The next day, I'd start drafting the letter to Maya. But tonight was for sharpening the knife. The morning after the counseling session, I boiled my tea twice and drank neither. My hands were steady, but my mind, sharp like glass, like something freshly broken and unwilling to be smoothed down, was already 10 steps ahead. I didn't rush the letter. I didn't write from anger. This wasn't some emotional purge. It was a record, a final entry, a quiet, surgical extraction of myself from Maya's future. I sat at my desk, mahogany, old, scratched from the years Maya used to draw with crayons on it while I paid bills. I used to tape her pictures to the side, ones where I was always smiling, drawn with pink cheeks and oversized glasses. How fitting that this desk, this exact desk, would now be the place I would write the last real gift she would ever get from me. Truth. I folded a fresh sheet of ivory paper, slipped it into the typewriter, not for nostalgia, but because I didn't want her to claim the message was edited, doctored, filtered. This would be final. Ink on paper, no second drafts. The keys clicked like gunshots. Maya, I love you. I will always love you. That's the only reason I stayed quiet as long as I did. But love is not immunity. Love does not excuse cruelty. I've spent the last 13 years building a future for you. $1 at a time, one silent sacrifice at a time, and I watched you destroy it in 13 seconds. I'm not angry, I'm not even hurt anymore. I'm awake. And I'm done giving my life to people who only love the things I provide, not the woman I am. There will be no discussion, no plea. You made your opinion of me loud and public. I am now returning the favor in silence. I won't fund disrespect. I won't finance performance. I won't reward mockery. The fund is gone. Attached is the updated account summary. No threats, no lectures, just truth. I hope one day, when you're older, you'll understand the difference between discipline and abandonment. You were not abandoned. You were held accountable. Grandma, I pulled the paper out, signed it with a full signature, Elaine Allison Lane, then folded it once, cleanly, precisely. I didn't even smudge the ink. I placed the letter inside a simple white envelope, tucked in the screenshot from my bank account, the one showing the trust balance at exactly $0. Then I sealed it. No return address, just her name on the front. No, to my darling. No warmth, she'd know. And so would Daniel, when he inevitably stormed in like some righteous executor, demanding how I could do this to his daughter. He'd learned soon enough that this wasn't just about Maya. My lawyer was already drawing up the amendment to my will. Daniel would find out in due time that he was being erased too. I didn't deliver the letter. I left it to be delivered. A courier envelope scheduled to arrive on Maya's first day of senior year. Let her wake up feeling entitled. Let her open it expecting a check. Let her learn the difference between a handout and a consequence. That evening, I opened a fresh notebook labeled Contingency, Daniel. It was time to take back everything, piece by piece. And this time, I wouldn't just be quiet, I'd be thorough. The call came on a Tuesday morning. One of those lukewarm, gray sky days where nothing feels urgent. Until suddenly it is. Mrs. Lane? The woman on the phone sounded young, nervous. I'm calling from Eastbrook High regarding Maya Lane's tuition deposit. We haven't received payment. I let the silence hang long enough for her discomfort to ripple through the receiver. I see, I said, calm and clipped. And what does that have to do with me? Well, Maya said her tuition was being handled through a family trust. She said you'd be the one to contact. I smiled without warmth. Then I suggest she contacts someone else. That fund is no longer available. The woman hesitated. Oh, I see. Should we let Maya know that? No, I said. Let her father handle it. And I hung up. The first message from Daniel arrived 20 minutes later. Mom, what the hell is going on? Maya's crying in my office. You didn't pay her tuition? I didn't respond. 5 minutes later. Are you okay? This isn't like you. I'll call later. 10 minutes after that. I just talked to Maya. Did you really drain her college fund? What the hell are you thinking? I turned off notifications. The last time Daniel texted me with urgency was when Ashley wanted a new SUV and he needed a cosigner. Funny how their panic only ever arrives when their lifestyle does. By that evening, Maya had taken to Instagram. Black background, white text. People will swear they love you until you stop paying their bills. The caption underneath, the betrayal hits different when it's family heartbreak. Over 300 likes. Dozens of comments. Some vague, some cruel. Old people stay bitter. That's why you can't trust anyone. You'll still come out on top, Queen. I scrolled through them while sipping tea from my mother's china. The one set Maya used to call ugly antique garbage. They had no idea. No one in her perfect little follower count bubble understood how much I'd already given. They didn't see the late nights, the quiet sacrifices, the years I went without so she could have. They only saw the headline she fed them. Grandma cut me off. Not, Grandma funded my entire childhood. Not, Grandma buried her only daughter and still found the strength to raise me with love. Not, Grandma was the reason I had a future at all. No. They only ever remember the moment you say no, not the lifetime you whispered yes. Daniel finally called around 9 p.m. I let it go to voicemail. His voice, when I played it back, was clipped, tired, angry. I don't know what kind of game this is, Mom, but Maya's devastated. You've humiliated her. You've made this personal. Personal? The audacity made me laugh. Just once, bitter and bright. He raised a daughter who humiliated me in public. He sat silently while she spit on my love with a microphone in her hand. But me redirecting my own money? That was personal. I stared at his contact on my screen for a long time. Then I edited the name from Daniel, son, to simply Daniel. No more parentheses. No more illusions. He wasn't my son anymore. He was a man who had taught a girl to see me as nothing but a tool. And now that the tool refused to work, they acted like I'd broken the contract. I turned the phone off. Maya's education wasn't my concern anymore. Daniel's outrage wasn't my problem. Their shock was the only honest thing they'd given me in years. The next morning, I woke up with clarity. I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel small. I felt untouchable. Let them flail. Let them scream into the void. They built their future on the assumption that I'd never stand up. Too bad. Because standing was exactly what I'd been preparing for. And I hadn't even started with Daniel yet. I met Evelyn at our usual cafe on Maple and 4th, the one with chipped mugs and a jukebox no one ever touched except us. She was already there, seated at our corner table, 2 lattes waiting. Morning, General. She smirked as I walked in. I raised an eyebrow. General? You've declared war on the ungrateful, and frankly, I salute you. I sat down, still not used to how light I felt since the silence. Not peace, just absence. The absence of expectation, of guilt, of obligation. It was weightless. I sipped my drink, then slid the envelope across the table, the one I'd kept tucked inside my coat since leaving Mr. Jenkins' office. Evelyn opened it. Her eyes scanned the letter to Maya, the transfer receipt, and finally, the amendment that removed Daniel and Maya from my will. When she looked up, she was grinning. You're not bitter, she said. You're brilliant. I'm done being their bank, I said simply. Evelyn leaned back. So what happens to the money now? That question had echoed in my head all week. I'd known what it wouldn't be used for, but what it could be. That was still forming. I reached into my purse and pulled out a pamphlet I'd picked up at the community center after my last visit. A quiet little program with a barely functioning website and a plain white trifold. The Allison Lane Memorial Fund Scholarships for First-Generation Young Women in Financial Hardship. Evelyn's face softened as she read it. Allison, your daughter? I nodded. The money was always meant to honor her. Maya just forgot where she came from. Evelyn tapped the edge of the pamphlet. But you didn't. We talked about logistics, donations, legacy planning. Evelyn, a former grant writer, offered to help me set up the paperwork. She even suggested someone I should meet, a girl named Jasmine. Her mom died 2 years ago, single parent. She's living with an aunt who works nights. Straight A student. Got into Northwestern on merit, but can't afford the tuition gap. She have the right heart? I asked. Evelyn gave me a look that made it clear. This girl hadn't been handed anything. She'd fought for every inch. She's everything Maya could have been, Evelyn said, if she'd had less money and more respect. I didn't say anything for a moment. Then I said, set it up. That night, I opened the safe I hadn't touched since my husband died. Inside was a manila envelope labeled, "For Daniel, Estate Draft V2. I pulled it out, tore it in half, and threw it into the fireplace without ceremony. No second thoughts. My son didn't raise a daughter, he raised a mirror, and all I'd ever seen in that reflection was entitlement. I started drafting the public deed of the fund. It would be filed under my daughter's name. My legacy would be carved in stone, but not for the girl who mocked me with a microphone or the man who trained her to think love came with a balance sheet. No, it would go to a stranger, a girl with grit, with hunger, with memory, someone who understood the value of $1 and the worth of a woman who'd given up everything to make it. By midnight, I'd written the announcement. Just 4 lines. The fund is no longer in Maya Lane's name. It is now a merit-based scholarship, in memory of a daughter who mattered, and in honor of the dignity I refused to give away. I clicked save. It wasn't vengeance, it was evolution. It was a clear Thursday afternoon when I walked into the financial aid office at the local university, envelope in hand. No camera crews. No ceremony. Just me in a pressed blazer, pearls at my throat, and a check that weighed more than its number. The receptionist smiled politely. Do you have an appointment? I'm here from Ms. Langston. I'm delivering a scholarship disbursement from the Allison Lane Memorial Fund. Her expression shifted. Not surprise. Reverence. Of course. Please wait here, Mrs. Lane. She disappeared behind a frosted glass door. I looked around the waiting area. Gray chairs, bulletin boards full of jobs and aid deadlines, students with overstuffed backpacks, and tired eyes. I saw one girl sitting with a laptop balanced on her knees, chewing on her pen, eyes darting between a spreadsheet and a textbook. There was something about her, urgency without panic, like someone who'd learned to survive without safety nets. That girl looked like I used to, like my daughter did. My name was called, and I followed the counselor into a quiet office. On the desk were files already open, one of them stamped with a name I recognized, Jasmine Rhodes. Evelyn had told me about her. First-generation student, lost her mom at 16, applied to over 30 scholarships, none of them enough. Until now, I handed the envelope over. Full tuition, books, housing, 4 years with a GPA clause. The counselor's eyes widened. You want to cover everything? I'm not here to sponsor dreams, I said. I'm here to secure them. She opened the envelope and stared at the check. Her voice softened. Would you like to meet her? I shook my head. No. She doesn't need a fairy godmother. She needs a future. But just as I stood to leave, I hesitated. Actually? I turned back. Tell her one thing from me. The counselor nodded. I looked her dead in the eye. Tell her this comes from a woman who was once told she was too embarrassing to exist, and who answered by making someone else's life possible. As I walked back to my car, I felt no triumph, no swelling music, just clarity. Maya wanted a spotlight. She wanted applause for treating me like clutter. She wanted to shine while I stayed out of frame, blurred and backgrounded like an old couch no one wants to throw out but can't stand to look at. Well, now another girl would shine. And Maya? She'd have to find out the hard way that the things she thought were owed to her were actually gifts that could disappear when you spit on the hands that gave them. I got home, poured myself a cup of tea, and opened my journal. August 15th. First disbursement delivered. Jasmine Rhodes, 18. Biology major, scholarship accepted. Maya Lane, no call, no apology, no accountability. Daniel, still pretending this is a phase I'll snap out of. It's not. He thinks this was about money. He still hasn't realized I was the currency all along. That evening, I saw Maya's Instagram story. Her face, blotchy with tears. Captioned, "What kind of person takes your dreams away just because they're offended? She was supposed to love me." There it was again, that poisonous assumption. That love means compliance. That silence equals support. That funding equals forgiveness. No, Maya, I didn't take your dreams away. You gave them up the moment you decided you were too big to say thank you. The tears didn't come when she mocked me. They didn't come when I emptied the trust. Not when Daniel accused me. Not even when I handed a stranger the future I once saved for Maya. But that night, they came. I'd been sorting through old files in the guest room. Boxes full of report cards, crayon drawings, homemade Mother's Day cards signed, "Love, Maya," written in backwards letters and glitter glue. And in one envelope, folded in half, was a photo I hadn't seen in over a decade. Maya at 6, missing her front teeth, hugging my legs in the kitchen. I was holding a wooden spoon in one hand, flour on my face, laughing like the world hadn't already swallowed me once when I buried my daughter. I sat down on the floor right there, next to a box marked first grade. And the grief I'd never truly unpacked came rushing in like floodwater through a broken door. I didn't sob. It wasn't noisy, just steady tears falling into my lap as I stared at a little girl who used to look at me like I hung the moon. When did she stop? When did I start shrinking in my own home? Was it the first time she corrected my grammar in front of her friends? Was it when Daniel let her roll her eyes and said, "She's just being a teenager, Mom. Let it go"? Was it me? Was I the one who taught her that love meant giving until I was empty? Because I was empty, and I filled her life with everything I had. But somewhere along the way, she learned that love had no limits, that she could insult me and still get rewarded, that love would always foot the bill, even after she stopped saying thank you. And that was my mistake. I taught her that love meant silence, that love meant self-erasure, that love meant letting people walk over you if it meant they got where they were going. That's not love. That's martyrdom. And I'm not dying for anyone anymore. I stood up, wiped my face, and grabbed the last folder from the box. Inside was a copy of my old life insurance policy, one that still listed Daniel as the beneficiary. I tore it in half. I wasn't just cleaning up my estate anymore. I was cleaning up my lineage. I would not be remembered as the woman who was used to the end. In the kitchen, I poured myself a drink. Not tea this time, whiskey. The bottle from the back of the pantry, the one I kept in case guests came by who needed something stronger. I drank alone, but I didn't feel lonely. For the first time, I felt seen by myself. I sat at my desk, opened my journal, and wrote. All my life, I confused sacrifice with love. Now I know, love without boundaries isn't devotion. It's self-destruction dressed as care. I was not cruel for cutting them off. I was cruel to myself for waiting this long. Maya hadn't called. Daniel hadn't shown up. They were still spinning stories, still painting me as the villain in their victim narrative. Let them. Villains have more agency than martyrs, anyway, and I was tired of being their stepping stone. From this moment forward, they'd have to walk on their own. I woke up at dawn, not because I couldn't sleep, but because I was ready. There was no tossing, no dread, just purpose. Maya's first day of college was 4 days away, or it would have been, and like any good grandmother, I had something prepared. But it wouldn't be a care package, no sheets folded in love, no granola bars tucked with notes, no good luck baby text before orientation. What she'd receive was the last piece of me she ever earned, and it wouldn't come wrapped in bows. It would come wrapped in truth. I walked into my study, lit only by early light spilling through the blinds. The typewriter still sat in the center of the desk, the same one I'd used for the first letter. I liked the weight of it, the way the keys demanded deliberation. I didn't pour tea, I didn't put on music. Silence was the only fitting soundtrack now. I rolled in a fresh sheet of paper, cracked my knuckles, and began to write. Maya, today would have been your first day of college. You would have walked onto campus with brand new clothes, new bags, a laptop you never paid for, and a schedule built on dreams you never had to earn. Instead, you'll be home, angry, confused, and maybe, just maybe, beginning to understand what real consequences feel like. I didn't take away your future. You handed it back the moment you laughed at me like I was disposable. What hurt the most wasn't your words. It was how proud you looked while saying them. But I didn't write this to shame you. I wrote it to close the chapter. You were never entitled to the money. You were never entitled to me. Everything you had came from my exhaustion, my silence, my endurance. And I need you to know something. The money wasn't the gift. I was. You lost access to the fund. But worse, you lost access to a woman who would have given you the world just to see you stand on it. I hope one day, when you're older and less interested in followers and applause, you'll realize what you threw away. I didn't leave out of spite. I left out of self-respect. And for the first time in my life, I don't miss you. Elaine Lane, the embarrassing woman who gave you everything, and then finally, nothing. I folded the letter slowly, neatly, placed it inside a navy blue envelope, the color of dignity, not mourning. Then I sealed it, attached a post-it note with one instruction: deliver on August 28th, 9 a.m. sharp. I placed it into a courier folder with a pre-signed release. She'd receive it on the morning she thought she'd be moving into a dorm. Let her sit in that silence. Let her feel the vacuum where entitlement used to live. Let her learn, if not humility, then at least gravity. I took one final step. I added a copy of the same letter to my will, not because I expected to die soon, but because I wanted it on record, that the cut was clean, that the silence was not neglect, but a decision. That afternoon, I mailed the courier package. It was the easiest goodbye I'd ever written. Daniel would find out soon enough. His name would be gone from the estate. But Maya? She'd be the first to feel it. And this time, the silence wouldn't be passive. It would be precise. It would be personal. I wasn't planning to see her again. Not in person, not so soon. But fate, like grief, has a twisted sense of humor. I was pulling into the high school lot, dropping off a donation box for the district scholarship drive. I'd labeled it carefully: new supplies, sealed packages, printed flyers about the Allison Lane Memorial Fund. I was halfway back to my car when I heard shouting. I said I need your help. You don't get to walk away now. The voice was unmistakable, sharp, frantic, louder than pride allowed. I turned toward the sound, and there she was, Maya, standing in the middle of the parking lot, red-faced, mascara running, one shoe slightly untied like she'd rushed out the door. She was yelling at Daniel. He looked the same, business casual, phone in hand, eyes darting, embarrassed to be seen in public with conflict, still a man more concerned with optics than outcomes. Dad, please, I need something. I can't stay home while everyone else moves into dorms. You said you'd help me. He shrugged, emotionless. That was before Grandma cut you off. It's not my fault you burned that bridge. And then, with no shame, no defense, he said the words that sealed his fate. That was her job, not mine. I stood across the lot, maybe 20 yards away, perfectly still. The sun was low, casting gold over the asphalt, making shadows stretch longer than they should. Maya turned to him, face crumbling. Then she turned and saw me. Her entire body froze. We locked eyes. No words passed between us. She blinked, confused, maybe hoping I was there to intervene, to rescue her, to fill in the blank Daniel had just abandoned. But I didn't move, not a step, because the silence she gave me that night at the party? This was me returning it. Interest compounded. She took a single step forward. Grandma, please. I opened my car door, calm, cold, certain. Daniel didn't even turn to look. He was already walking away, phone pressed to his ear like nothing had happened. And Maya? She stood alone, in the middle of a parking lot, in the echo of a moment she never saw coming. I didn't cry, I didn't wave, I didn't offer her anything, because the moment you ask for help without apology, without remorse, what you're asking for isn't help. You're asking for permission to keep using someone. And I was no longer available for use. I got into the car, adjusted my mirror. She was still standing there, mouth open, eyes wide, realizing, maybe for the first time, that I was gone. Not dead, not missing, gone by choice. I pulled out slowly, didn't speed, didn't linger, and I never once looked back. That night, I poured myself a glass of water and sat at the kitchen table where she used to do her math homework. I stared at the empty chair. It didn't hurt the way I thought it would, because for the first time in 18 years, I wasn't wondering how to make her love me. I was finally wondering how I'd ever let her not. I wasn't planning to see her again. Not in person. Not so soon. But fate, like grief, has a twisted sense of humor. I was pulling into the high school lot, dropping off a donation box for the district scholarship drive. I'd labeled it carefully. New supplies, sealed packages, printed flyers about the Allison Lane Memorial Fund. I was halfway back to my car when I heard shouting. I said, "I need your help. You don't get to walk away now." The voice was unmistakable, sharp, frantic, louder than pride allowed. I turned toward the sound, and there she was. Maya, standing in the middle of the parking lot, red-faced, mascara running, one shoe slightly untied like she'd rushed out the door. She was yelling at Daniel. He looked the same. Business casual, phone in hand, eyes darting, embarrassed to be seen in public with conflict, still a man more concerned with optics than outcomes. "Dad, please!" "I need something. I can't stay home while everyone else moves into dorms." "You said you'd help me." He shrugged, emotionless. "That was before Grandma cut you off. It's not my fault you burned that bridge." And then, with no shame, no defense, he said the words that sealed his fate. That was her job, not mine. I stood across the lot, maybe 20 yards away, perfectly still. The sun was low, casting gold over the asphalt, making shadows stretch longer than they should. Maya turned to him, face crumbling. Then she turned and saw me. Her entire body froze. We locked eyes. No words passed between us. She blinked, confused, maybe hoping I was there to intervene, to rescue her, to fill in the blank Daniel had just abandoned. But I didn't move, not a step, because the silence she gave me that night at the party? This was me returning it. Interest compounded. She took a single step forward. "Grandma, please?" I opened my car door. Calm, cold, certain. Daniel didn't even turn to look. He was already walking away, phone pressed to his ear like nothing had happened. And Maya? She stood alone, in the middle of a parking lot, in the echo of a moment she never saw coming. I didn't cry. I didn't wave. I didn't offer her anything. Because the moment you ask for help without apology, without remorse, what you're asking for isn't help. You're asking for permission to keep using someone. And I was no longer available for use. I got into the car, adjusted my mirror. She was still standing there, mouth open, eyes wide, realizing, maybe for the first time, that I was gone. Not dead, not missing, gone by choice. I pulled out slowly, didn't speed, didn't linger, and I never once looked back. That night, I poured myself a glass of water and sat at the kitchen table where she used to do her math homework. I stared at the empty chair. It didn't hurt the way I thought it would, because for the first time in 18 years, I wasn't wondering how to make her love me. I was finally wondering how I'd ever let her not. The knock came just after sunset. I knew it was her. There's a sound children make when they knock in desperation. 3 sharp hits. Then pause. Then again, like the door owes them something. I opened it, and there she was. Hair in a messy bun, wrinkled hoodie, eyes red, not from tears, but from sleepless rage. "You!" Her voice cracked before she could finish. I stepped back, letting the screen door swing gently between us. "Maya, you ruined my life." Her words dropped like fists. You took everything, everything I was supposed to have. College, freedom, my future. I didn't flinch. She paced the porch like a caged animal, throwing her hands as if volume might restore power. You lied to me. You said you'd always be there. You raised me. And now you just disappear? Why? Because I embarrassed you? I waited until she stopped moving, until she finally looked me in the eye. Then I said evenly, "No, Maya, not because you embarrassed me, because you erased me." She stared at me, blinking. "I didn't leave because of that one night," I said, calm as a scalpel. "I left because that night was the final proof. I had spent years giving everything, and somehow, I still ended up the punchline in your monologue. You made a speech about how humiliating I am, in front of people I paid to feed, in a room I rented for you. You didn't just disrespect me, you did it with a grin." Her voice dropped, bitter. "It was a joke." "No, Maya, it was a confession." She clenched her fists. "You think this teaches me something? You think taking my future makes you righteous?" I leaned against the doorframe, folding my arms. "I think letting you have a future built on mine, without respect, without gratitude, was the mistake, and I'm correcting it. You gave my money to some stranger." I stepped forward, letting the screen door close quietly behind me. "I gave it to someone who needed it, someone who still knows what a second chance is, someone who hasn't confused love with entitlement." Her face flushed. She was shaking. "You owe me." "No," I cut in, voice low and final. "I don't. I gave you everything. I buried my daughter and still showed up every day to raise hers. I missed retirement. I missed vacations. I missed being seen as anything but yours. You weren't grateful," I continued. "You were greedy, and when greed speaks louder than love, the giving stops." She blinked fast. Her mouth moved, but nothing came out. For once, silence belonged to me. She took a shaky step back, then forward again. "So what? You're just done with me?" "No," I said quietly. "I'm done funding the version of you that doesn't care if I exist." And with that, I opened the door, just wide enough to step inside. As I closed it behind me, I heard her sob, sharp, humiliated, real. But I didn't turn around, because her tears weren't apologies. They were just another form of pressure. And I had finally stopped breaking under it. That night, I wrote one final journal entry for her. She came to the door screaming. I answered with truth. She asked why I didn't love her anymore, but that was never the problem. I loved her enough to let her go. She hated me because I finally loved myself more. 2 months passed in silence. I didn't want to go. When Evelyn first told me Jasmine was being honored, I made an excuse about the weather, about my knees, about anything to avoid standing in a room full of strangers while someone else's granddaughter spoke my name. But Evelyn just gave me that look, chin tilted, one brow raised. "You gave her a future, Elaine. Go watch her walk into it." So I did. The event was held in the same community hall I once booked for Maya's 16th. Funny, isn't it? The same walls, same chandeliers. But this time, the air felt different. There was no DJ, no fake smiles, no phones held up for clout, just students, families, teachers in scuffed loafers and Sunday dresses, people who knew what it meant to earn things. I sat in the second row, clutching the program like it might slip from my hands. Evelyn sat beside me, quiet but present. Then they called her name. Jasmine Rhodes, recipient of the Allison Lane Memorial Fund. Applause broke out. People stood. And that girl, my girl, now, in all the ways that mattered, walked across the stage like she belonged there, head high, shoulders back, a fire in her steps. She wore a navy dress and flats that looked too small. Her hands trembled as she took the mic, and then she smiled. "I didn't think I'd get here," she said. "Not after losing my mom. Not with everything we couldn't afford. But someone believed in me. Someone I never even met before wrote my name on a check instead of their own grandchild's. The room went still. I stared straight ahead. She continued, I know that money could have gone to someone with the same last name, but instead, it went to someone with the same story. My throat tightened. She looked toward the audience, then directly at me. She didn't just give me money. She gave me proof that good things can still come from grief, that strangers can become family. That love doesn't always look like blood. It can look like bravery. She held the mic with both hands. And if you're here, Mrs. Lane, I just want to say, thank you. You're the grandmother I never had. It shattered me. Not like glass, like ice finally cracking in spring. The room blurred. The applause started, but I didn't hear it. Evelyn reached for my hand, and I didn't realize I'd been gripping the edge of the chair until I let go. The tears came then, not because I was sad, because for the first time in years I felt seen. Not used, not tolerated, seen. I stood only when someone gently tapped my shoulder. One of the organizers. She'd like you to come up. I walked to that stage, slowly, but tall. And when I reached Jasmine, she didn't pose. She didn't pull out her phone. She just hugged me, tight, like she meant it. And I broke, quietly, into her shoulder. Not for Maya, not for Daniel, for me, because someone finally said thank you. And it wasn't because I wrote a check. It was because I showed up. It's been half a year since the ceremony. Maya vanished from social media a week later. No more curated captions. No more cryptic blame games. Just silence. I heard through Evelyn that Daniel moved in with some woman he met at his firm. Didn't even bother to leave a forwarding address. Typical. A neighbor mentioned Maya's been working part-time at a sandwich shop by the interstate. Saving up, they said. Still no college. Still no apology. And yet, I don't feel victorious. I feel done. That's the difference between revenge and closure. Revenge wants a reaction. Closure wants quiet. And I have it now. If you found this story powerful, moving, or thought-provoking, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching and for feeling the story all the way through.